Welcome to Live, Let, Thrive, a podcast about the Airbnb life, the share economy, and everything in between. Here are your hosts, Micah and Steve.
Hello, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Live, Let, Thrive, your favorite short-term, mid-term, long-term rental podcast in the world, coming at you from Arlington, Texas, and Fort Worth, Texas. Actually, just Fort Worth today because Micah couldn't join us, but we have a special guest on this episode 317, and that is Justin King from PadSplit. Everybody's talking about PadSplit, especially in our world, in our Airbnb short-term, mid-term rental world, as another possible way to make some income with that house or condo or whatever you got that you can turn into more bedrooms and more revenue. So I'm happy to talk to you today, Justin, and ask you a million questions. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to a million questions. I don't know if we have quite enough time for that number, but
yeah, I'll try to talk fast. First question, can you sell me this pin, Justin? I'm just kidding.
I probably could, but I think you already got one. So
I got like 1,000. Anyways, yeah. So first off, give us a quick little. I mean, people have heard about PadSplit. I've heard podcasts about PadSplit, and I get the gist of it. But could you do like a little elevator pitch on what is PadSplit?
yeah, absolutely. So PadSplit is a marketplace similar to Airbnb, which a lot of your audience probably already familiar with. But we're a marketplace similar to Airbnb. The difference is we specialize in the co-living or rent by the room model. We've been around since 2018, so we've had our lumps kind of coming out of COVID and performed really well there. But effectively, what it does is investors will bring properties to us. We find the tenants for those properties, and then we have additional services that help them manage their co-living portfolio.
Nice. So rent by the room thing. So the first thing that jumps out at me is why would yours be better? Because there are Airbnbers that I know that do rent by the room and they utilize Airbnb for that type of rental experience. What makes y'all's different than just, hey, I'm just going to throw some rooms on Airbnb?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's really two things that we do that stand out. One is that our target market is this marketplace, right? Are these individuals that are looking for rent by the room, right? So in all of our marketing efforts are geared towards finding these tenants. We're not trying to find, vacationers or anything like that, right? Which is different from Airbnb. And because we have this targeted marketing kind of like strategy, I guess you can say, we're seeing occupancy rates hover around 90% across the platform. And we have about 19,000 rooms under management here. Beyond the fact that we're really effective at filling bedrooms, we do have additional services available to hosts whenever they bring a property to us that you're not going to find on the Airbnb platform, right? First and foremost, you get to work with somebody like myself or another account executive on our team that are going to make sure that the property is set up for co-living. Obviously, if you're doing Airbnb, that's a different experience. So we're going to help you tailor the property and make sure it's just designed in a way that it's fitting our target demographic. And then we offer additional services. Clearly, marketing, that's one. We do the screening on the tenant, so we take them through a long-term rental screening process. You can utilize our platform to manage your entire portfolio, right? We have hosts who have 200, 300 plus rooms on the platform. Our tenants use the platform, or members use the platform for communication, maintenance requests, all that stuff is submitted through there. And then we also have some really valuable tools when it comes to pricing directly inside the platform as well. And on the back end, obviously, we're doing rent collections. And the biggest difference between the way we do rent collections and the way, other rental properties or other investors may be doing rent collections is we're collecting rent on a weekly basis. And that really does two things for you. I think the biggest thing it does is you don't run into those scenarios where, that you would potentially have under a long-term rental where, you get a guy who, they get paid twice a month, you're collecting rent once a month. And then, dog gets sick, grandma gets sick, car breaks down. That's where the rent money goes and they don't have the money come, rent day. By collecting rent on a weekly basis, we're meeting individuals on the day that they're getting paid. And we have a best-in-class collections rate of about 98% on the platform. So
That's pretty awesome. I did notice that on a different podcast y'all's founder was on. He mentioned the weekly rent payment, and I thought that was a great idea because now a lot of nowadays a lot of people get paid weekly, not just
Right.
bi-weekly anymore. So that's great. Get that rent paid before they go and waste the money. Let's keep it real. Or
Yeah.
get an expense jumps up. Um, Now, I've been renting long term for a while now, right?
Sure.
I've mostly shifted. I say I'm like 95% short term and midterm rentals, right? But I still have some long term rentals that houses that I can't do short term rentals in these areas, whatever. But and I've come across renters who've asked if they could do pay me every 2 weeks instead of pay me on the first of the month, and it sounded like okay, yeah, that's fine. They pay me on payday, that's fine. The only hiccup with that, and perhaps y'all have a solution for this, is let's say the first of the month rolls around, the first half of the rent's due. They say, hey, it's going to be a few days, blah blah blah, and then they start getting a little bit late on that, and then next the second amount is due 2 weeks later, and so trying to calculate the late fees and all that stuff was a headache. I was like, wait, whoa, they just figured out a way to pay me to do 2 weeks late on rent on me and without me charging them late fees. And it was a weird deal. I came across.
Sure.
I didn't anticipate. How do y'all do late fees when you're doing weekly payments?
Yeah, I mean that's managed all inside the platform, right? So it's not something that you have to worry about. We have a pretty hard and fast rule, and then I say hard and fast, but it's at the discretion of the host as well. But if somebody gets $300 behind on rent, then we'll look to issue a notice to vacate and remove them from the platform until they, make that current host whole. And that's a big caveat is like if a member wants to come back to the platform, they have to make the previous host whole financially before they can come back to the platform. But inside the platform, all the late fees are calculated. You'll have visibility through the financial reporting to see, what hosts or excuse me, what members are producing late fees. And the reality is like, in most markets, the average price is going to be up for a room is like 165 to even 195 a week. So when you're talking about getting $300 behind, that's really like 2 weeks or less worth of rent is how far people are getting behind, and we're jumping on that immediately and removing those kind of non-payers out of the property if necessary before it gets to a full month of non-payment.
Cool. And that brings me to another thing, the notice to vacate. Because I mean, I've been through man, in the last few months, I've been through two evictions, right? It's no fun. It sucks.
Yeah, it really
And,
isn't.
and I know, and y'all mentioned the people that are living in our houses with these pad splits are considered tenants. They're staying there for, months at a time, right? So at first I was gonna, I wouldn't say attack you. I was gonna say, how are y'all gonna get these people out of our places? At first I
Yeah.
was gonna say that, but then when you mentioned it's all calculated in the platform and doing the late fees and then automatically sends the notice to vacate. All keeps it all nice and pretty. That actually, to me, it kind of helps in court because you have it all nice and easy for the judge to look at and say, okay, yeah, they missed the payments here. Here's the boom, 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 the late fees. This is exactly how much they owe. I mean, it seems like it keeps it nice and clean for in case a court situation happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we obviously talked through the services. There's going to be some leftover stuff that comes with operating the business, and one of the things that PadSplit doesn't directly do is evictions, right? Like it's still up to the investor to go show up in eviction court, et cetera. But we'll package it nicely, those documents nicely for you, provide them to you. You issue the notice to vacate, like I said, through the PadSplit platform. And I think a lot of your listeners are pretty stunned to hear that our eviction rate across the 19,000 rooms we manage is only 1.2%. So we're way below the national average. Now, granted, there's a lot of strategies that hosts will use the same way you would use under a long-term rental, cash for keys, things of those nature to get people out ahead of time. But even with those strategies, we're seeing incredibly low eviction rates across the platform.
That is super low. I mean, at first I would attribute that to it's going to be a lower rental price than someone trying to, squeeze into a house and they could barely afford, and then all of a
Right.
sudden you get the high bills coming through and everything, and a car breaks down and they're screwed, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing to understand is like where these rooms are priced at, it's below the price of a studio apartment, right? And so whenever you're priced that way, our target demographic is about 1/3 of the working population. I know specifically here in DFW, it's 1/3 of the working population, but That's effectively who we're going after. Those individuals that make too much money to qualify for government subsidy, but they don't make enough money to qualify for a studio apartment, right? So the income is there in a lot of cases. And so, they can afford a place because they didn't have to pay for furnishings. They don't have these crazy high security deposits. They don't have massive utility startup costs. It's all taken care of. So we're really, not only is the room more affordable, but we're reducing the barrier to entry and the financial cost to them to get into housing. So it makes it more affordable for them in the long run as well.
And what kind of deposits do you usually look at if they're only paying like, 150 to 200 bucks a month? What kind of deposits are we looking at?
Yeah, so 150 to 200 a week is, I think, is
Oh,
what you're
a
kind of
week. I'm
referring
sorry.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
week.
yeah. And it takes a little bit of training in the mind to move away from monthly payments to
Monthly.
weekly payments. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so we don't have high security deposits on the platform. We do have what's called a move-in fee that members are charged whenever they book a room. That effectively works as like a non-refundable security deposit. Now, you may see like $100 and you're like, well, that's not going to cover my turn costs. Well, if you're still thinking in long-term rental, mindset, then you're absolutely right. That wouldn't cover your turn costs. Like those turn costs are $1,000 plus. I mean, I'm sure, the average one is usually $2,000 to $3,000 in its turn costs. But when you're renting a room, that's the only space that you're looking at turning. So the turn cost there is typically $80 to $100, right? So that non-refundable security deposit that folks are paying, which is the move-in fee of about $100, is going to cover your turn costs whenever they move out, right?
Mm.
And then obviously, just because we're talking about turns, the beauty of that is that because you're not turning an entire property, it doesn't take days or weeks to get it ready for the next tenant. We're talking about one day it's ready for rent, back on the platform in a day, maybe 2 days, typically rented out in most markets within 10 days of being back on market.
Mm. That is cool. And so that's what another thing, moving folks around. I saw on your platform that if someone's not happy at a place or something like that, since they're part of your network or whatever, they think they get one free move out to another spot or something like that. And then each time they move after that, they have to pay another fee or something.
Yeah, that's right. So whenever members come to the platform for the first time, they're agreeing to a 3-month commitment, right, to stay on the PadSplit platform. So, obviously with co-living, you have roommates. They're not touring the property before they book it. They're booking it in the same way an Airbnb would. So if they show up to the property and it's not representative of the photos, or they're not getting along with the roommates kind of within that 3-month period, then we do offer one free transfer to another PadSplit property. That is a way you could lose a tenant, but that's also a way you can gain a tenant as well if they're coming from there. And the way the marketplace is set up is like we've created a system where members have control over where they stay, right? And so it's important to kind of suss out in your initial, discovery call with these folks before you allow them to book how close they are to their work, if they've ever lived with other roommates, things of that nature. And if you're getting the right answers from there, then you have a pretty good visibility in how long they stay. But at the end of the day, we do give them one free transfer out of the PadSplit that they first move into another PadSplit property once they've identified it.
And how much does it cost to transfer after that?
That's a good question. That's something that we recently instituted. I'm not entirely sure what the transfer fee is. I'd have to get back to you on that one. Yeah.
Because what I automatically think of, if it's a young, adventurous what's it called?
Digital
Remote
nomad.
worker, yeah, digital
Yeah.
nomad, and wants to use y'all as a platform to just hop around, work a few months here, work a few months, and I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that is a demographic that we kind of see. Obviously, there's, the affordable housing demographic is bigger. And so we see more of that workforce housing. But yeah, that is certainly a demographic we have within the platform. And we have guys that'll stay in Vegas for 6 months and then move to Orlando for 6 months and then, go to Baltimore for 6 months. That's certainly the benefit of what we offer.
Now, are these houses or places to rent? Are they co-ed or are they only female and some of them are only female, some of them are only men, or how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, it is co-ed. Obviously, sex is a protected class under federal fair housing guidelines. I will say that the vast majority of our renters, I think it's 60-ish% or so, are male. But yeah, we do have co-ed houses. And what I typically see, honestly, just from anecdotally, like when a house begins to fill up with females, right? it usually gets full primarily with females and vice versa. Because when a member goes to book a room, they're going to be able to see the profile of all the folks that are inside of the room, right?
That's
So
cool.
they can make a decision based on what they see. And then it kind of like, guides itself from there.
Now, so it's illegal for you to make a completely female pad split.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's a federal for housing. We still have to adhere to those guidelines. So we can't be
Ah,
discriminatory against, sex, race, familial status, all of those things.
that is crazy. I mean, to me, I understand they want to, keep everything whatever legal, but to me, it just makes sense to have like a fully female house. Just so they don't have to worry about dudes being bad dudes.
Yeah, being creepy dudes for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, one of the ways that we like say, is talk about how that would pop up, right? And like, how does that materialize in the day-to-day operation? So one of the things that all of our members have access to is the profile of other members inside of their house. And the cool way that we leverage that is each member can rate each other on a 5-star scale on a weekly basis inside the home. And so what that does for you as an operator is that becomes your canary in the coal mine for potential issues, arising in the house dynamics, right? And so inside the platform, we'll actually show you all of your members. We'll show you a breakdown of how many have a high rating, how many have an average rating, and how many have a low. Common mix is like the vast majority of the members are going to be highly rated. Typically, we don't see, outsized number of issues out of this. And if we did, we probably wouldn't have a business model. You might have one or two that are going to be an average rating and typically 0 to 1 that have a low rating. A lot of times it's just raising attention to whatever the issue is on that rating system. If it was, hey, you're being noisy during quiet hours or you're not cleaning up after yourself, those are probably going to be the more common ones. Raising attention to or raising awareness to the issue with the member is going to be enough to correct that. But if we have folks that are not being a good roommate, then we'll look to remove them from the property. I think one of the things that's the most important piece in co-living is the house dynamics. And if they go south because you have a bad member, we have to act quickly to remove that member or correct that behavior. Otherwise, we could be looking at potentially more vacancy from that property as opposed to just one person leaving, right?
Yeah. So I have the house that I've been. This is funny because I turned this into a podcast, and the reason why I heard your founder on another podcast, and so I was like, this is a cool idea. Let me just go in there and make an account. And I do have a house that's coming up for rent, and I just evicted a lady out of this house, right?
Mhm.
I will say it's not the best neighborhood. It's not the worst neighborhood. It may be around, B minus C plus
Yep.
area. So I just anticipate having more issues at this house than, something in a higher ranked area. But anyways, that's why I was thinking maybe it'd be a good pad split. It's 4 bedroom,
Mhm.
two bath, right? And I have an add-on room in the back that's like a second living room, you know what I'm saying? But
Mhm.
it has a place where I could put an actual door and turn it into another bedroom. So like I know you haven't seen the house. I guess you saw the first picture if you did look at it. But so what would your advice be with my house? I have a nice sized living room, little
Yeah.
kitchen area. Like I said, 4 bedroom, 2 bath, and then that add-on room I can make into a fifth bedroom.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll take you through like the process that I go to evaluate a property for PadSplit, right? And this is going to hold water for investors as they look to get into the platform or they're considering, bringing their property over. So the first thing that we have to identify is the type of neighborhood you're in. And you mentioned it's in like a B minus kind of high C neighborhood. That's ideal for PadSplit properties. And the reason is because those are mostly investor owned neighborhoods, right? And if you do have, families living in that neighborhood, they're typically, and it depends on the market, but you can have a lot of multi-generational living. There's obviously not any HOA in those neighborhoods usually, which is great for really any type of real estate investing, right? And so there's just lower expectations on how your neighbors are going to kind of behave. I will say that when you talk about getting in trouble with the city or getting citations, it always stems from the neighbors first. We've yet to come across any municipality that has a specific co-living task force that's looking for and identifying these properties to cite them and bring trouble to them. It always starts with the neighbors first. And so if you're in a neighborhood that's low HOA or no HOA, kind of class B, class C, you're going to be able to operate a lot better and a lot easier without neighbor issues typically. So that's the first thing we look at. The second thing we want to look at is like where this property is positioned at inside of the metro, right? Dallas, Fort Worth, I live here in Dallas as well, so I'm happy to walk this property with you at some point. But Dallas, Fort Worth has high car ownership. About 70% of our workers own vehicles in DFW, right? So we need to identify, do we have enough parking for every single person inside the house? If you're in an area that has great public transit, like Atlanta does, you typically want to have one parking spot for every 2 cars. In Dallas, we really need to have probably one parking spot for every one room, or excuse me, Atlanta is one parking spot for every, one parking spot for every 2 rooms. Dallas is going to be one parking spot for every 1 room. That's what we really need to identify. So a lot of times that's going to be your limiting factor on the number of rooms that you can put inside the house. Once we kind of identify that parking works out, right, it's going to make sense. So we're close to the metro, or maybe we're close to a bus stop that folks could be using. Looking at the property, understanding the floor plan is obviously huge. We have limitations, obviously, around bedroom size. We need a bedroom, 80 square feet or more. I'll tell you, just operationally, having a higher square footage, bedroom, it is going to result in longer tenure in that room. So what I don't like to see from investors is like having all your rooms or having multiple rooms kind of right at that minimum, because then you're just creating rooms that are just going to have higher turnover, right? Which operationally becomes a nightmare, and it's going to result in, lower realized revenue over the year, right? So it may look good on a pro forma, but the reality is it doesn't operate the way you want it to. So we look for square footage. We need to have 2 points of egress in every single room. So that's going to be the door you create to walk into the room, and then typically a window to jump out of in the event of a fire, right? I've seen bedrooms where they've had 2 doors, a door on each side, but no natural light coming into the room. Again, probably going to be a higher turnover room with that type of setup. So we want a room, ideally, that can fit a full-size bed at a minimum, that can fit, fit some additional, amenities like a mini fridge if you want to go that route, or a desk with a chair, and at least one piece of furniture for folks to store their clothes in. So that's what we're really trying to chase after when it comes to creating the bedroom. So because you've owned this property for a while, I would imagine you got a pretty good interest rate on it. It's likely, it'll cash flow well with, just adding 1 room. But for new acquisitions, what I see, 99% of the time, just where interest rates are at today, we really have to be able to get 2 bedrooms out of a property, additional bedrooms out of a property, to make it cash flow in any meaningful way. Usually that results in needing a single story footprint of about 1,700 square feet or more is typically what you look for. But if there's additional common areas in this room, like a formal dining room or anything like that, those are other spaces, or even an office. Those are other spaces that we can consider for conversion.
And who does the conversion?
So that would be you, the investor. That's something that PadSplit consults on, me directly. I think the beauty of it is obviously, I definitely want to give, lend credence to the fact that you've been doing this for a while. You probably have a great vendor network here in Dallas, Dallas, Fort Worth. In every core market that we operate in, we've established our own vendor network. So real estate agents, wholesalers, contractors, insurance brokers, photographers, like property managers, you name it. So anything anybody would need to get started with PadSplit, depending on the process that you're in. A lot of these folks own their own PadSplit portfolio, so they understand the process A to Z, and they're experts in their specific field. So I would consult with you on like, hey, this is where we can do the rooms. I can kick you over to a PadSplit vendor, PadSplit general contractor, who's done several dozen conversions in the market. Or if you want to leverage your own contractor network because you think it's going to save you money and you're comfortable with those guys, then we can just sit down and have a quick conversation with them about expectations and what it needs to look like. And I'll give you a quick. Go ahead. I'll give you a quick story. So, had an investor in another market who wanted to use their contractor, and he took the PadSplit guidelines that we talked about square footage size and number of egress points, and he told the guy, "Hey, I need a window and a door for every room that you're going to create." Believe it or not, he put a door, great, facing inwards, and he put a window right next to it. Window was also facing the inside. So you walk by the room down the hallway and you see a window into the room and the door right next to it. So it's like sometimes you got to give these guys a little more guidance on where things need to be. So that's why I like to chat with, if you have your own contractor, allow me to have a conversation with them on expectations, and we can do that in a walkthrough. Or again, just leverage the network that we've kind of built out.
That's hilarious. Windows inside the house. That's funny.
Yeah.
So my thing, what you mentioned, trying to maximize the rooms. So, like I said, mine's a 4-2. It's about 18 something, 1850 square feet, something like that. And it has that add-on room in the back that I can make another bedroom. So that takes me to 5-2. Now,
Okay.
in the hallway, there's the hallway bathroom, right? It's a full bath,
Mhm.
got a tub and everything. The other bathroom is inside the master bedroom. So I would assume that that one bathroom is only for the person staying in that room, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So, whenever you have every room it has is a private lockable space, right? So you're typically going to install keypad locks or digital locks on every door. We have a maximum requirement at PadSplit for the number of bedrooms that can tie into a shared bath, and that's a 4-to-1 ratio. So, this would work well, and it fits inside of our ratio for this house you're considering. That one room that has its own private bath, that's going to go for a higher rate because we have more privacy there, and that's an additional amenity for that potential tenant or member. And then the other bedrooms, that fits right in with our 4-to-1 ratio, right? All four members are going to share that one bathroom. I'll say in the event, say for example, we're able to identify another room in this house or a future house, and we're going to kick it from a 3-2 or a 4-2 up to a 6-2. What we would need to do in that case, because if we tried to keep this primary suite as is, we would then have a 5-bedroom to 1-bath ratio. So we need to fix that. So what we usually do there is build a hallway through the primary suite so everybody can access that primary bathroom, and then that primary bathroom becomes shared, and your ratio is going to switch then from a 5-to-1 to a 3-to-1 at that point. So you'd be good.
Hmm. Okay. So that master bedroom would still be able to be used as a bedroom. You just kind of like have a hallway in between the bedroom
Correct.
and that bathroom.
Yeah,
Okay.
and there's obviously limitations on where the bathroom's located at. But I've also seen investors, like if there's a large closet attached to the bathroom, which you sometimes see in older homes where the closet is attached to the primary suite. If that hallway is facing the hallway itself, or maybe it has the back wall against the hallway, you can just do a cutout right there, and you don't have to build a hallway through your primary suite. You just do a cutout there, and then everybody can just go through the hallway, through the closet, and then into it wouldn't be a closet anymore, effectively. It would just be a space at that point, but it would allow access to that room it would allow access to the bathroom without, reducing the size of the master suite or the primary suite.
Cool, cool. Now I'll tell you a quick story because this is the first time I ever heard of you guys was about 3 years ago or so. I mean,
Mhm.
you know how time is, 3 or 4 years ago. A guy from Canada called me, right? I have my, Argus rentals. We manage other people's short-term rentals, midterm rentals also, ours and then other people's. So he called me out of Canada. Hey, Steven, I have a house in Arlington, which, I hear you talk about it on the show, Arlington. And I'm in Canada. I bought it. I've never been to the house, never seen it. It was a pad split, but we're getting out of PadSplit. We just had so much trouble with the city and the neighbors and, fines and this and that. And then, and it kind of turned into like a halfway house on us. I mean, he wasn't here. He's never even been to the house. So he's
Right.
never even seen the inside. He's just seen pictures of it. He bought it and turned it into a PadSplit. So he said, "Could you check out the house, see if it'll make a good Airbnb?" And of course, I told him first of all, it can't be an Airbnb because you're outside of that zone. You know how Arlington is zoned.
Arlington's got a zone, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I said, but maybe I'll check it out. Maybe we could manage it as a midterm or even long term for you. And so I went and checked it out. And first of all, this house was like from the 70s. I mean, the carpet was nasty. The walls
Mm.
was, it was wallpaper. It was just anything. The design was funky. But what I noticed, I guess it was an expat split. And I could see, and I know y'all have come a long way since. I'm not saying to me, I got a bad taste in my mouth for PadSplit because I saw all the like markings from where the divider walls used to be. And now
Mhm.
I know y'all didn't do it because you said vendors go in, or he has his own vendor that goes in, hey, go make me a bunch of rooms. And out of this 3 bedroom house, I think they cranked out like 8 bedrooms or so. It was a lot of bedrooms. And you could tell where a dining room was turned into 2 bedrooms. And I mean, this house is Frankenstein, right? And so so to me, I was like, man, what the hell is this PadSplit thing doing? First of all, they jacked up this house, which the house was already jacked up, and then they put a bunch of crackheads in here, according to this guy, and so it was just a bad situation. The neighbors hated him, all this stuff. So that was my first experience hearing about you guys, but I've been hearing a lot more lately, and I know, like you said, y'all had growing pains in the beginning, so I guess that doesn't happen as much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like the best way that I could compare this business model is, think of it like buying a franchise, right? If you spend 50 to 100K to buy a franchise, right, a franchise business, you get access to the SOPs and processes, the training manuals, the vendor network, the brand recognition that comes with that. That is not a guarantee of success, right? You still have to do the work and be a good operator. And a lot of that, where I see hosts fail, is they fail to realize that it's not just a push button, make money business, right? Real estate never is. If you engage with a property management company like yourself, then it becomes a lot more passive and a lot more push button for you. And I think that honestly, like investors in the early stage may have got may not have potentially gotten the best advice, or had a misconception about how this was going to operate. And so that's one of the things that we've worked incredibly hard at over the past few years, is how do we improve the quality of our operator, right? Because at the end of the day, if all of our operators do a bad job, then this business model is not going to go well. We're going to get a bad taste in our mouths, or investors are going to get a bad taste in their mouth. Cities are going to get a bad taste in their mouth, and it's going to make it difficult for co-living operators in the future. So we've worked very diligently, and we're continuing to work diligently to improve the quality of the operator, identifying potential issues that operators may have before we get to that point, and introducing them to people that can fix those problems before they happen. One of the things that we recently rolled out was a PadSplit Host Academy, where if you can go find gurus in this space, so to speak, that'll charge you thousands of dollars on how to do a PadSplit, property. We created something internally. So once you become a host, you can go through our PadSplit Academy and learn how to operate the business. So there's probably a lot of things that could have been said about the way the business was operated. Could have been the acquisition itself and the way it was set up, obviously. There's a lot of unknowns there for sure. But I will say that the vast majority of PadSplit hosts that work with us, they typically within the first 6 months of bringing a property online, 40% of them are bringing a second property online. So things have changed pretty drastically. We've upped our standards, and we've upped the quality of the operator and the host as well.
So sorry, can't even talk. From that house particular,
Yeah,
I mean, how ugly the house was to begin with. I mean,
sure.
do you think one of your people actually went out and saw the house and said, okay, this will be a good pad split? Or
Potentially. I mean, in the Dallas market, we've had a couple of account executives here, but they've kind of churned through a couple times trying to find the right person, just like any business, right? Finding the right person can be difficult. I will tell you from my experience, and like the way I interact with hosts nowadays is like, I will go and walk a property with people in my market just to make sure we're all on the same page. And then, I definitely want to advise you on how to be successful. Like, for example, I just walked a property yesterday in Richardson, and I showed up and the guy had already had masking tape all over the place where he's going to put his rooms, right? Which is great. All right, cool. Self-starter. I love that, man. This he's ready to go. But, he was trying to do 6 bedrooms in this house, but he had 2 rooms that were 80 square feet, small. And I said, hey, man, instead of doing 2 bedrooms here, let's get rid of one of these. Let's just keep it as the dining area. And let's move the wall out on this other room and make it bigger. Let's get a better experience for the members. And I think that the member experience is something that Airbnb operators certainly understand, right? They understand how important it is to provide a really good member experience, one for ratings and reviews, but also to ensure that people continue to book their place, right? And the same holds water with PadSplit, right? Like if you don't prioritize the member experience, they're going to go somewhere else, or you're going to have a failed operation overall. So it's tough to exactly say like how that would have happened, back then. But I will tell you, like today, that's one of the biggest things I push is member experience. Let's think about the members, think about the person that's going to be in the place because they're the ones paying your rent at the end of the day. They're the ones paying your mortgage. They're the ones that are going to allow you to continue to operate.
That's what's cool. That's what I like about you guys, because just from what I know briefly, is you do have someone here in Dallas Fort Worth, and I assume every major city has a PadSplit person there that can go out and walk the properties.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's not. I would say property walks is not something that happens needs to happen all the time either, right? So if we're looking at the photos, if I'm looking at the photos online and I can tell right away, like, oh, we can do a bedroom here and here. I'm going to partner you up with Jose, who's my contractor in this market. He can go and walk the property with you, and he's done dozens of pad split conversions. So he has all the knowledge we have. We downloaded him with that knowledge. If there's any changes in our platform, he's up to date on it. He'll be able to advise you as well. So it's either us or a vendor partner that can do that.
That is cool, man. And I did have a bunch more questions.
Go for it, man.
I'm assuming that like I said, I do a lot of Airbnbs, right? And
Yep.
so you get a lot of people from the Airbnb world wanting to say, "Hey, I'm not making enough money at this Airbnb. Can you turn it into a pad split?" And what differences, I guess, furnishing wise, would differentiate someone's Airbnb than what makes a good pad split? And I'll say this because I heard your founder talking about, okay, sofas are usually not a good idea, and that's like we always think put sofas in the living rooms, right, and the TV and
Right.
this and that. But I started thinking about that too. You don't want someone crashed out on the sofa, right, and
Right.
just being a couch potato, and then everybody feels awkward going through that living room. Yeah, how do you address things like that or create spaces like that aren't for someone to just lay down and fall asleep on?
Yeah, yeah. I'll give you another property example in Richardson. So we have an Airbnb host, and to be very frank, I love it when Airbnb hosts decide to get into this model because they understand they're already coming with a very high hospitality mindset, right? And so now we're just like working it down towards kind of the standard and expectations for our members. And it's easier going that way than it is getting long-term rental investors up to the standards, right? So you're used to a lot of work providing an amazing experience. And now we're going to tell you to do slightly less work and you don't have to spend as much on furnishing. So like, oh, okay, I got this. So I have a property in Richardson where this investor was Airbnb. She crushed it for many years. And then she kind of, fell prey to what everybody else did with it, with short-term rentals, low occupancy, struggling assets, things of that nature. So she came over to us and she's created some wonderful spaces inside of the house that make sense for co-living, right? So instead of just trying to pump out as many bedrooms in the house, and she left the living room as is. But what she didn't put in was a couch, right? Because we have a no guest policy at PadSplit. And what you don't want is to create an environment where, room one, Joe invites his buddy over to watch a game on this 70-inch TV that you bought and put in the living room. Well, Joe's friend Jack falls asleep on the couch and now he's there for 3 or 4 days. And he's like, hey, nobody's going to say anything to me. So what she did in that space is she created it like a lobby, right? So there's 4 hardback chairs that are comfortable enough to sit in for 30 to 40 minutes, have a cup of coffee, chat with your roommates. There's no television in that space. So it's comfortable enough to sit in that and relax and have a conversation, but nobody's taking a nap in there, right? Nobody's staying the night in the living room. And so if you are going to create these common areas, you want to create a space that is comfortable enough for people to kind of socialize in for a short period of time, but you're not creating an environment where people are going to hang out for hours on end and potentially create an environment where, unexpected or unwanted guests think that, oh, I'll just crash here on my buddy's couch, right?
Mm. Now, I don't know if you already do or not have a section in your website. These are like really good examples of pad splits. Do you have something like that? Like these properties here make like.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have, well, the beauty is like you can obviously go into the platform from the member's perspective and see what's available for rent. So that's just great market research right there. But even further beyond that, you can actually go into the platform and drill down on a zip code by zip code basis in the markets we're operating in and see price, rental rates based on properties that have rented, the number of units or rooms inside of that zip code, And then you can also see occupancy rates and booking velocity too, right? So how quickly are we getting the first booking in that zip code? How long is it taking for those assets to get to 80% occupancy? So it really gives you a really good idea of where to invest. I will say that like when you're working with an account executive, like you're not going to be able to see the properties that are obviously all the way booked, right? But we have the ability to kind of take a deeper dive and provide, kind of like comps, if you will. Like if you're going into a zip code where there's a lot of competition, you obviously want to make sure you stand out, or you're going to have chase higher rental rates. How does that compare to other properties that are achieving those higher rental rates? And we can take a look at that. We can take a look at the photos. We can take a look at the furnishings. We can identify all the potential, expenses that you need to invest in to make sure you're operating in the same way. Throughout the website as well, we obviously we have a PadSplit guidelines section where you can understand exactly what it takes to bring a property online and the things we look for from a minimum requirement standpoint. And we do have recommendations on the furnishings and the type of furnishings that you would need to buy for each room and just in the general area of the house as well. So
Now, a dining room table and chairs is pretty much a necessity. People need a place to eat. You don't want them eating in the rooms, right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're going to have folks that do that anyways, for
Yeah.
sure. You're not going to be able to get around that. But yeah, providing a dining room table with chairs is a necessity, right? I've seen other folks even do like, I'm sure you've been to a Chipotle before, how they have the elevated seating on the exterior of the restaurant there, where it's like high top bar, right, with high stools. I've seen people install that in the walls in the kitchen, so like folks can sit there and eat. People have utilized the existing like large island space as like the table and chairs area. You can go a variety of different ways, but ultimately, like we do need to have a place for people to sit in the common area and eat. So dining table and chairs is the more common one though.
Oh, that's cool. Now, you did mention no guests. I was gonna ask you, that was one of my questions. And and it goes without saying, probably no kids allowed, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, you talk about family being a protected class. If a mom with a child comes, they can certainly rent the space, right? But you as the host make the determination on whether or not you can approve or deny that booking. I think there's increased risk for sure for a child to be in a co-living environment. That's just a dead given. The way I've seen hosts execute this, and obviously staying in line with federal fair housing, is whenever you create your listing and you go on a per room basis and you're entering all the details, you can select single room occupant or multiple room occupant. So that right there could potentially screen out that. And obviously you would want to adhere to whatever the local municipality says is the maximum or the minimum number of people that can, live in a certain square footage, right? So if you have a 100 square foot room, most municipalities say you can only have one person in that. Typically it's like 150 square foot, and then you can have two occupants in the room. So kind of know what that is before you select that single room occupant or multiple room occupant. But for the hosts that have accepted, a parent with a child in the room, and again, I don't know if legally standing, if this is right or if this is wrong, this is what their attorney advised them, is they created effectively a separate document, which is, works in a way, it's supposed to be like a release of responsibility to the landlord or the investor, basically saying like, hey, this kid can't be, unattended at any point in time, always has to have adult with them. You understand, these additional risks that come with having a child in a co-living environment. So again, I think the single room to multiple room occupant can screen some of that out. You have to be careful because we are kind of, looking at federal fair housing there and what constitutes a family. And then if you do have to go that route, it's certainly worthwhile to talk to an attorney and understand what your potential risks are and then how you mitigate or eliminate those risks. All that being said, we don't have a lot of rooms like that. The vast majority, 90+%, probably even beyond that, are going to be single room occupants.
Yeah, that was a big one. I'm like, the other guests might not like want to not like so much having a screaming kid in the house, make it
Yeah.
rough.
I've got four of them, man, and I've been looking for somebody to take them for a while because they tear stuff up. They're loud. They're loud. I mean, I love them to death, of course, but man,
Yeah.
are they noisy.
Yeah, I got little ones too, man. It's yeah, I wouldn't want to co-live in another place with my little ones. It'd be
Yeah.
crazy, you know. So y'all all over the world or just the United States right now?
Just the US right now, we're pretty much got the Sun Belt and the Eastern Seaboard pretty well covered. We're expanding into other markets as well. LA is probably, LA and Denver are our two newest expansion markets. Working on Nashville as a core market, but we can do a pad split anywhere in the country, right? It's our core markets is where you're going to get that marketing support at, where we actually spend advertisement dollars to go find tenants.
Hmm.
So if you're in outside of a core market, it's going to be much more, host-driven marketing through, Facebook Marketplace posts, Craigslist posts, things of those nature, or you built a really good relationship with the local employer, right? That's a good way to find tenants. So it's much more host-driven in those emerging markets. But all of our core markets, yeah, we offer the marketing support, and there's about I don't know 30 plus of them right now across the country. So.
Yeah, I had friends in LA, and even way back when I was going to LA a lot, let's say about 10, 15 years ago, people renting out of rooms was like a common thing because it was so expensive over there. Still is, more so.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people have been doing it for a long time. Other parts of the world, this is just a common way to house folks anyway. I mean, if you look at London, I know I've got one of my realtor partners here is from London. And he's like, man, we've been doing this business model for decades. He's like, so it's great to see that the US is kind of moving in this direction because he already understands it really well. So yeah, I mean, the US is, and if you think about it, even all the way back, like boarding houses were very common. I mean, I'm sure you've seen houses in and around DFW that were clearly boarding houses at some point. They usually have they're older homes built in the 20s or so. They have massive entryways into all the rooms. Sometimes you can still find room numbers above the door in some cases. So this was very common. Things changed. And then now it seems like we're kind of moving back towards this housing model across the country as a necessity.
Yeah, Forrest Gump's mama ran a boarding house, right?
There you go. She sure did. Yeah, that's how he
Elvis,
met Elvis.
Elvis, yeah, there you go. And he taught him his moves.
Yeah,
No, that's man, that's cool because like in Europe, to me it's cool. Everything's smaller in Europe as far as places they live in and stay. Fridges are smaller. Everything's smaller. Cars are smaller. But
yeah. Washer dryers, one unit.
yeah, I went with some buddies to Europe one time, and we hopped across hostels, and it's like, dude, why don't we have these here, man? This is freaking cool. Youngsters
Yeah.
meet people from all over the world. You're sharing rooms. You can get your own room, but you can share rooms with people, bunk beds, and
Mhm.
just and you meet people, and you save a lot of money, and you get to go enjoy the city. I thought this is a
Yeah,
great
definitely.
idea. Over here, we spend a crap load of money on a hotel, and then after that, you don't have much to spend on your vacation. But it's just it's a cool model. I like it a lot.
Oh,
As far as okay, so yeah, you had mentioned okay, 150 to 200 a week. You can make it
right.
one of these. Of course, you have to look at the house. I mean, walk it or get the pictures and stuff like that for it, right? What amenities could I put in my place? I automatically thinking I'm coming from the Airbnb world. A nice coffee bar, maybe the guests, the tenants would appreciate like a nice coffee bar, where I stock it with nice coffees for them, something like that. I mean, what do you think about adding these little amenities?
Yeah, I mean, the amenities are really like going to be in the room themselves, right? And if you think about it, you know, these aren't folks that are vacationing, right? They live in the area, they work in the area, right? So that's where you have to reframe it, kind of on who the tenant base or the member base is. And so the amenities inside of the room are kind of similar to a hotel, honestly, right? Like if you can do a mini fridge, that's an added, potential increase in the rental rate. A common one that I see a lot of hosts install is, a desk with a chair, right? Just like you would find in a hotel, so people can sit down and work. I would say the vast majority of our hosts don't even have TVs in the rooms, right? Most folks can watch TV on their phone through Netflix or something like that, and they have access to the Wi-Fi, which is paid for, so that's enough for them. But we do have hosts that will put, 40-inch TVs at a minimum in every room. But like common area amenities, one thing that I see some hosts kind of skimp out on sometimes, which, kind of frustrates me is like just artwork on the wall, make it nice, make it comfortable. That's a good one to have. You don't have to do crazy expensive coffee bars or anything like that. I have, guests that or hosts that, they just provide pots and pans and basic cutlery, and that's it. And a single coffee machine, and that's it, right? And that's all you need to provide. I think that, considering like we have a house in Richardson, going back to this host that came from Airbnb, she wants to provide an elevated experience. And, in all honesty, her rental rates are some of the highest, probably are the highest in DFW. And she doesn't do anything crazy, right? She has that little sitting area. She has artwork on all the walls. Every room has a full length mirror, which is something you kind of don't think about. But if I'm sharing the bathroom with somebody and I'm getting dressed in the morning, I don't want to have to walk in the bathroom to see, how I'm looking. I definitely don't want to have to wait for somebody to finish using the bathroom and then walk in and make sure my shirt looks good. I can do that right in the room. And then she just has like basic, appliances, right? She has a toaster in there. She has a coffee machine. I think she has an air fryer in there. That's pretty much it. Like, you don't really need to go too far above and beyond as far as amenities are concerned to provide it to people. Now, again, you certainly can. But again, just to understand what that means in rental rates probably doesn't move the needle that much.
Now, what about like sending a cleaner once a week or once every 2 weeks to go take care of the common areas?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to tackle that problem. I'll tell you that our best hosts, and we just completed a massive survey of hosts to figure out what the bottom performing hosts do and what the top performing hosts do. And the top performing hosts have a system in place when it comes to cleaning. Now, that can be a variety of different things, and PadSplit's obviously agnostic to the way you handle that. You do have some hosts that they'll send a cleaner out once a month, and that's a really good way to make sure the property is maintained, cleaned, and you get a set of eyes on it on a regular basis. One of the things that I actually like more than that, because folks are staying in the home, I like the idea of kind of like making them a little bit more responsible and having more ownership into the house dynamics and the quality of living they have. And so I have one of our property managers here. What he institutes for every property that they manage is they set up what's called MCL days. And so every host or every member, they have an assigned day where they're going to take care of three things. One, they're going to grab all the mail from the mailbox and put it in the mail sorter. That's also their day for C, which is cleaning. So they're going to do light swippering of the property, wipe the countertops down, light cleaning of the bathrooms. And then L, that's their day to laundry as well, right? So that's their specific assigned day to use the laundry machine. And if any other member wants to use it on that day, they have to ask for their permission. So it kind of like keeps everything organized, charges them with a little bit more ownership in the property and the quality experience that they have. And then if they need to miss their day or something like that, they got to find a replacement for it. They have to talk to somebody else and get them to do it. So I like that model. I also have models where you just charge, one person in the house with doing all those things every day or on a weekly basis, and you just reduce the rent as a compensation. But at the end of the day, you need to have some sort of process or system in place, right? You just can't leave it up to folks to be a free for all, because it's not going to work well. You got to have some sort of system in place to allow that to, allow those cleanings to happen and things of that nature.
Just like picking up after your kids, right? It's the lazy parent that cleans the kids' rooms for them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's I'm guilty of that sometimes.
I am. We all are.
We all are. Yeah, for sure. But hey, you gotta make them responsible, and I think that's the way to go. Have some ownership in the space that you occupy, and things typically go smoother. Then you have more appreciation for the other people inside the house as well, right? If they're cleaning up on a daily basis, you're going to appreciate that person more because they're doing their duties also, right?
And if they don't clean, you cut off their internet.
Yeah, just cut it off altogether. Yeah.
Man, I've this is really enlightening. I do look forward to walking the property with me if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Arlington's not too far. Are you where exactly are you? I mean, not your address, but what city exactly?
I'm at 123 Main Street now. No, I live in North Carrollton, kind of Castle Hills area.
Okay.
You're familiar with that? Yeah.
Yeah, I know Carrollton. That's not too bad. I'm in Fort Worth, kind of like Hearst area. That's where I live.
Oh, I know where that's at. Yeah.
My house is in central Arlington area.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great area for sure. Great area for PadSplit. We perform well out there.
See, there already are. pad splits out that way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got over 1,000 units or 1,000 rooms in the Dallas market. And for context, when I started with PadSplit back in June, we only had 350 rooms. So we've tripled in size in the Dallas market within less than a year.
Whoa.
I'll tell you really quickly, the thing that really got me excited about working with PadSplit, and I did Section 8 rentals. I've managed portfolios, at 150 doors at one given time in my real estate journey here. And I saw the impact that affordable housing has on families. We used to do 3-month interviews with people after they moved in, make sure that's good. And I was really blown away at like how much stability it provided to folks and how it improved kids' ability to operate in school, how it just takes such a burden off the family when you're able to house them. And it does the same thing for single room occupants. But when I joined the company, or when I was thinking about joining the company, the Atlanta account executive showed me Atlanta market had 6,500 rooms at that time, or 6,000, something like that. And I was like, that's cool, because I was curious about saturation, right? Especially knowing what I know about Airbnb. And they're 90% occupied at that time. I was like, okay, well, show me Dallas. And I know a lot about both markets. I've done real estate in both. They're very similar as far as purchase price, overall demographic, relative size. And then I saw Dallas had 300 rooms, and I was blown away. And I was like, holy crap, we have a huge runway here, and we're going to have massive demand. We already have massive demand for this. So, and then most markets are like that, right? Like Atlanta is the most mature, and they see 90% occupancy rates. Our next biggest, market is Jacksonville, and they only have 1,700 rooms, and they sit at the same level of occupancy rate. So there's massive demand for this in almost every single market across the country right now.
I like that. The now you did mention earlier that it is the neighbors that usually start getting these houses in trouble. Now, if you're in an area where the neighbors aren't going to be such a problem, there's no HOA, then you might be, doing all right. City ain't going to bother you. City don't want to go out there and be bugged. They don't want to be bugged by Airbnbs. No. It's usually a neighbor on that crap too. But but anyways, I don't see, and they mentioned it and it was Brandon Turner's podcast where your founder went on, and I see it as like something the cities don't look to ban, because it's actually helping the housing crisis.
It is massively. And, at the end of the day, like, governments always take a long time to adapt to markets, right? Like that's just the nature of the beast. I don't know when the last time you saw a government move quickly on anything was, right? So I think that there is a potential in the future, and it would be foolish not to think this way, that there is probably a time in the future where there is a level of regulation. I don't necessarily think that that's a terrible thing for this space, because there's a lot of bad actors in co-living, right? Who create these 15-bedroom houses with no egress points, and it's a massive safety hazard, and they don't care about their tenants. And very frankly, like, PadSplit, we're working with municipalities across the country to build a moat around co-living, so that if you want to do co-living, you have to do it the PadSplit way, right? Because we have these minimum standards in place to ensure that people have a safe, clean, and affordable place. And you're right, the city isn't out looking for these things, but when you talk about the neighbors, it's so vitally important to be a great neighbor first and a good host second. Right? If you're just a great neighbor first, you're going to be able to operate with no issues. And if you do have an issue, hopefully you built a good enough relationship with that neighbor that they contact you first and let you know, hey, there's a problem happening at the house, right? Like, and is this something you can address? That's the best case scenario. And it doesn't always work like that. That's why I'd say it's very important to choose the type of neighborhood that you get into.
Great advice. And the government does move fast on one thing. It's tariffs. One day we have them, one day we don't have them, and maybe tomorrow we'll have them again. It's fun. It's a great time to be alive.
That's very true.
Yeah. So, yeah, man, I'm excited. I think I want to go ahead and try this house as a PadSplit, man. And I had a million more questions, but we are coming up on time. One more I was going to ask you. Oh yeah, the screening of the tenants. I guess that's one thing I didn't cover. How do y'all screen the tenants?
Yeah, we do a long-term rental screening, right? So we're going to do a background check on them. So anybody that has a felony conviction over the past 7 years is automatically out, disqualified. We do eviction history reports. So if you have more than one eviction over the past 7 years, you're automatically out. And then we do income verification, where we'll actually connect to their bank account through Plaid to see who their employer is, how much they're paying how much they're paying them, and then we validate that they can, that they have the income to meet the rental amount. I will certainly say, when we talk about best practices as a host, this is your opportunity, kind of at the first step in engaging with tenants, to ensure you're operating your business correctly, right? So we're going to take them through the standard background screening. It's a really good idea as a host to not approve that booking until you've had a conversation with this person, right? I will say, in my experience in managing Section 8 rentals, it's very easy to just take the first person that comes your way because they pass the background and then they obviously have guaranteed money. I learned really quickly that you got to get to know these people a little bit, because you're going to have 6 approved applicants, right? You can't just take the first one. You got to figure out who these folks are and then make sure that they're the right person for the property and they're going to take care of it and they're not going to destroy it, right? And so same concept here. Have a 15 to 20 minute conversation with this person before you approve that booking. And I will tell you, for the hosts that come to me, after they've been on the platform for 2 months, they say, Justin, I got a problem tenant. What do I do? My first question is always going to be, did you pick up the phone and talk to this person before you let them in? And the answer 100% of the time so far has been, no, I did not. Okay, well, this is a good learning curve here. Let's not do that in the future, right? Now let's talk through how we work this out, right?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I learned that the hard way with long-term rentals.
Yeah.
As soon as you talk to someone on the phone, you kind of really, all your spidey senses start going off. You get a better feel for it,
Trust your gut every time.
And when you talk to the previous or the current landlord and previous landlord, that's a whole funny situation too, because the current landlord will be like, yeah, they're good, they're cool, you can tell they're lying.
Get them out.
And then the previous landlord, no, stay away, bro, stay away. And a couple more questions. I did hear your founder talk about the 50 plus. There's ones that PadSplits that are 50 plus, like 50 years old plus, to stay at these particular PadSplits. That's not illegal to do that?
To be honest with you, I don't have any hosts who execute that strategy, so I'm not super familiar with it. I really don't know how to. I don't have anybody who does that. Okay. But age is a protected class. Again, I think at the end of the day, there's probably a space to do that type of housing.
Because there's senior living houses.
There's senior living housing for sure. I'm not entirely sure what the guidelines are on that. Again, I've never had a host come to me and say, hey, this is what I want to do, right? Uh-huh. It's usually when hosts come to me in the Dallas market, they're near a university or something like that. They're like, hey, I just want to target student housing, right? And we have to talk through kind of what that means a little bit. But I haven't had anybody come to me and say, hey, I only want to do a female house. I only want to do a male house. I only want to do, moms with kids. I haven't had that quite yet. So.
Okay. And one more selfish question, because I have a condo that I own over here, kind of where the Channel 11 tower is, Stop 6 area, Fort Worth.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, not the best area, of course, probably not. Yeah, very not the best area. And I converted. I did a little PadSplit thing myself, except for there's no window in the middle bedroom. The middle bedroom is kind of like where a dining room was, but it's kind of closed off. So I just added a little door and made it another bedroom in case a family with a kid wants his own room. Hey, throw him in there. So I made it from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom. So it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, I guess you could say. And but it's in a condo community. It's with the HOA and all. Is the PadSplits work in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, first of all, my question is, why didn't you just put a window facing the hallway on the inside? Right?
Genius.
Yeah.
Check.
Yeah. No. When it comes to HOAs, like PadSplit, we'll take a property, right, if it's in an HOA. But one of the things I always try to stress to investors is, like, what are the risks based on the decisions you want to make? What are the additional risks here? Now that we've outlined those risks, are you willing to accept it? Okay, you're willing to accept it. Okay, let's talk through how we mitigate that risk a little bit, right? So if you're going to be in an HOA, let's talk through how we mitigate the potential risks of that. First of all, we need to understand what the covenants and restrictions are of that HOA, because they're going to be very fast to act in most cases.
Oh, yeah. If
you're breaking those very quick. I'll tell you, my HOA, I mean, as soon as my shutters start looking a little off, I'm getting notices to paint those things, So They're very quick to react. So we have to talk through that stuff. And again, if you're comfortable and we talk through the risk and you're willing to accept it, then absolutely we can do it on the platform. But I always want to make sure that we've identified the potential risk up front for sure. And so we can do a PadSplit in a Class A property if you want, but there's risks involved, right? So let's talk through that and figure out if you're willing to swallow that and move forward.
Cool, man. Well, thank you for hopping on the show. You answered a ton of my questions, and I'm sure there's a ton more questions from our listeners are going to be asking me to ask you. So I'll follow up with you again, maybe on another episode in the future, but for sure, email and all that fun stuff. So, padsplit.com is where they can find you guys, right? Anything you want to say to my listeners?
No, I would just say that, like, if you're interested in kind of exploring this, you can reach me at justin.king@PadSplit. Feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions as well. We go from there.
Cool, brother. Thank you for hopping on, and thank you for all you're doing out there for this housing crisis situation and helping us make a little money in the process. So see you on the flip side, man. Thank you. And to all your listeners, peace out. Later.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Live, Let, Thrive. Be sure to tune in next week for all the latest in the world of Airbnb and all that entails. Bye-bye.